Let's start the webinar. Take control of your data. That's me. I'm principal of Veritus Group, and I've been doing this work for over 32 years. First on the nonprofit side for 8 years, and since then working for different agencies and Veritus Group since 2009. So I've been in it a while, and hopefully I have some knowledge I can share with you today. Here are the main objectives of today's webinar. First, we're going to discuss some significant problems that have caused the nonprofit sector to lose its way. And then understand the areas you need to focus on with your data and how you can begin assessing your own data donor file to identify those potential issues that are impacting you. And one of the things we're going to do is kind of come out of the presentation, and I'm going to show you an actual assessment, a data assessment that we did for a client and who's been a client for us now for a while, to show exactly what we're talking about when we're talking about assessing your data and looking at your donors. And then learn about the tools that you can use to catch those red flags within the donor file. Just a little bit about Veritus. We are absolutely donor-centered and grounded in a data-driven approach to mid, major, and planned giving. So all of the data that we talk about, the structure we talk about, or the Veritus way, is really to set the structure so that it allows fundraisers to develop relationships with donors. That's what we're all about. So our strategy and our approach is based on years and years of looking at millions of data records, donor records. We've consulted with hundreds of clients over 2 decades now, thousands of Veritus Group Academy participants who take our VGA courses. And we work with thousands of fundraisers and nonprofit leaders over the years. Currently, we have over 85 consulting clients that we're working with on a daily basis, helping them build their major gift programs and help co-manage and coach their major gift officers, mid-level officers, and plan giving officers. And as you may know, we also do our Veritus Group Academy as well, where we're having courses and people all over the world are taking that. All of that stuff that we do, all of that knowledge over the last years, we've been able to create content and provide these webinars and teach you what we've learned and what's important. So today, that's what we're going to do. Here's some of the consulting clients we've partnered with over the years. Some are large, some are small, some are medium size. As you can see, there's a wide range of different types of clients, from public media, arts, universities, all types of different organizations. And the key is, in mid-majors and planned giving, is we're dealing with people. So whether they're a donor who loves the arts or someone that loves international development, they're still people. And so that's the beauty of major gifts, mid-level gifts, is we get to deal with those individuals one-on-one. So we really feel at Veritus that overall the nonprofit sector has lost its way. Here are some of the big problems that we see in nonprofits around major gifts. Many mid, major, and planned giving programs are in lack of leadership. Leaders really don't understand mid, major, and planned giving as well as they should. Nonprofits are struggling with high donor value attrition. I'm going to talk about what's the difference between donor and donor value attrition later. But this is across our sector, we see anywhere between 40 and 60% donor value attrition loss year over year with donors and donor files. Fundraising talent is turning over at extremely high rates. We hear about this all the time. You read any nonprofit news source, and that's what they're talking about. how to bring in new people, hire people, but we're losing them. And even before the pandemic, we were losing people anywhere between 15, 18 months. And that's just not enough time to develop relationships with donors. It's one of the big reasons why we have a problem in our sector. And as I was kind of saying before, there's a real lack of understanding around mid, major, and planned giving programs with nonprofit leadership. For some reason, there's a lot of knowledge around the direct response acquisition and cultivation side, but less so on mid, major, and planned giving side. Or they may have that major gift knowledge, but they think it's just going out and having dinner with folks and hitting people up for money. And that's a real lack of understanding of what is needed to be successful in major gifts. And I feel like as a sector, we've lost our way and have forgotten our mission. That our mission is not just what we're doing every day to change the world, but if we're a nonprofit, our mission also includes our staff. That they are part of our mission as well. And we've lost our way on that. Okay, I want to focus on understanding attrition, the difference between donor attrition and donor value attrition, because this will be important to understand this as we look at data. So around donor retention, we know in our sector that donor retention is a serious problem. And over the last 5 years, it's continually steadily gone down. We also know that in the commercial side, the for-profit side, they do a much better of retaining their customers. And so there's something we could learn from the for-profit side on what is it that they're doing that's retaining their customers. They're customer focused. So what are those things that they've done that we could learn from? The other side of this is value attrition. And this is what I mean. So look at donor number 4. They in their first year of giving, they gave 10,000 and then it went up and then went down significantly. But between year 1 and year 4, we went from $10,000 to the donor now only giving $4,100 a year. So we lost $5,900 from year 1 to now they're giving in year 4. That's donor value attrition. We kept the donor, but the value went down. Another way to look at that is look at this entire caseload. This is an actual portfolio of someone's donors that we evaluated. In year 1 of this portfolio, they had 150 donors that gave $1.9 million. And then look at what happens by year 3. Those same donors in that portfolio were now giving $584,000, or we lost almost 70% of their value between year 1 and year 3. So that's just one portfolio, but this is what's going on in many major gift officers' portfolios. Another way to look at this value attrition is looking at view 1. View 1 is typically how CEOs and DODs look at the strength of their mid and major gift programs. So in this case, we're looking at bottom line revenue from all donors that have given 1,000 plus cum in that year. So we're not looking at every donor, but the donors that are giving 1,000 plus cum. And in year 1, they gave 2.5 million. Year 2, that program brought in 3.1 million, or in 1 year, they grew 21%. So if you're the CEO or DOD and you're just looking at bottom line revenue, you're feeling pretty good about that. 21% growth is nothing to sneeze at. That's good growth. What we like to do, however, at Veritus is kind of peel back the onion a little bit. And this is how we view this program. In view 2, so you see the donors that gave that 2.56 million. We want to track the giving behavior of those same donors into year 2. And as you can see, those donors in year 2 gave just 1.3 million. So we lost 49% of their value from year 1 to year 2 in just 1 year. The only reason this program grew overall is because new donors came in in year 2, $1.794 million worth of new donors, and mask the behavior of the donors in year 1 to year 2. So it looks like on overall, we're doing fine. But when you peel that back, you look at what happened to those donors that gave in year 1 to year 2. Why did we lose 49% of their value in that 1 year? Here's another view of looking at this. This is another donors file looking at revenue overall. They grew from 20 million to 23.3 million by year in the 3rd year in tracking this. So over that period, they almost increased 17% in revenue. So not bad, 17% in 3 years, okay? Well, peel back the onion on individuals and on organizations here. So look at that class year, year 1, they gave 10.5 million. Those same donors by the end of year 3 were giving 7.5 million, or we lost, about 28% of their value from year 1 to year 3. Look at the class from year 2. These were new donors that hit the 1,000+ Q mark, 3.1 million. Those same donors the next year, they were at 1.7 million, or we lost 44% of their revenue in just 1 year. Then you look at organizations, similar story, from 8.9 to 6.2, and then 3 million down to 1.9. So looking at all this over individuals and organizations over this 3-year period, this organization lost over $9 million to value attrition. Now remember, overall, they grew, at bottom line, 17% over this time. But individually, if you look at individual donors by year and what they've lost, it was over $9 million. Now, when the CEO saw this, they were just like, wow, we had no idea. We thought we were just doing fine. Bottom line, revenue looked good. But the CEO said to us, what if we could just recoup half of that? I mean, that would be another $4.5 million for programs. If we could figure out how to lessen this value attrition year over year. Here's some of the other findings we saw doing this value attrition or this data assessment. We see a lot of donors giving the same amount year over year. In this case, this is a little snapshot of that. These were like $2,000 donors, but they're giving the same amount every year. What this tells us is that no one's paying attention to these donors. No one is doing anything to reach out to these donors to find out who they are and to challenge these donors to give more. We even see this in the $25,000 range. So they're giving great gifts and they're very loyal. That's awesome. But when we see this year over year giving, it means no one is reaching out to these donors to us. No one's asking them to do more. No one's building a relationship and trying to figure out what are the donors' passions and interests and how does it relate to our mission so that we can match that up with our mission and their passion. So very simply, this is how we lose donors. Let's focus on the orange area. This is what donors are saying to us. Hey, you made me aware of a problem and you asked me to help and you said it would make a difference. So I gave you what I could. And then this is where the nonprofits go wrong. Most nonprofits go then up to the red. You didn't tell me my gift made a difference, and so I go somewhere else. This is the #1 reason why donors leave organizations. They don't know what happened with their gift. We didn't report back on the impact, or we didn't thank properly. What we want to get to is that blue area where you told the donor that their gift made a difference, how it made a difference, what the impact was of their gift. And when you do that well, more often than not, the donor will want to give again. And so it's a cycle. if we do this well. This is a key. So here's some things to keep your eye on if you're really serious about keeping these donors. And this is the areas that you need to look at. The number of donors who give the same gift amount annually. That's a warning. It's great that they're loyal, but it's saying something that we're not challenging those donors. Tracking issues with new money. Just like we were saying, don't just look at bottom line revenue. Look at the donors that are giving in year one and look at the same donors. What are they giving in year two? And then how much revenue is coming in from new donors that are hitting your major gift or mid-level mark. And there's too much focus on securing new money from new donors. This is probably one of the biggest things that we hear from CEOs. We need more major donors. We need more new donors to come in. And what we show through our assessment essentially is you may not need as many new donors as you think, because you have donors in your data file right now who, if you actually cultivated and steward them well, would be giving more and more, so that you wouldn't have to go on outside and try to find new donors. We'd have to look at your donor file to see how you're bringing in those donors. But more often than not, when we see leaders and managers say we need more major donors, we usually find that they're not cultivating their current major donors correctly. And if they could be seeing so much more in revenue. And then we often see systems that don't support reporting on impact. This is a huge key. So what do you have in place with your program folks to be able to easily report back on the impact that those gifts are making on your mission? And too often we see that leaders do not invest in that, are not able to report back out to their donors in any kind of way. And then that's why they lose them. So these are some things to keep your eye on. I want to point out this. This is what we call a healthy donor pipeline. So what we're always looking at when we look at the data is, how are donors being acquired? How are they being cultivated? And how are they moving, especially from that general cultivation phase to mid-level and major gifts and planned gifts? Too often we see either an organization who is really good at donor acquisition and cultivation through direct response strategies, but they don't have a mid or major gift program that's doing well. And so they're stuck. There's clogs in this pipeline. Or we see that they really have put a lot of effort into major gifts, but very little on donor acquisition and cultivation. And so the pipeline into major gifts is stunted because they don't have enough donors coming in. And so you always have to, as leaders and managers, have to be looking at, are we investing properly in each stage of the donor pipeline? Too often, though, however, we see that in the mid-level stage and major gift stage, there is not enough investment around this area. And there's been more investment in the donor acquisition, cultivation, and direct response strategies, and less in the more one-to-some or one-to-one strategies. So you need to be able to look at this pipeline and say, how are we doing as far as our investments in each of these areas? Because ultimately, what you want to do as an organization is make it as easy as possible for a donor to come into your organization and move up that donor pipeline however they want to. And too often we create barriers for them to do that. Either we don't invest properly in a mid-level program, and so what you have is donors who are giving $500 to $1,000 or even more, but are being cultivated only by mail. So in a sense, we're treating a $1,000 donor like a $10 donor. And this is why you see donors giving the same amounts every year, because no one is actually reaching out to them through any kind of personal means. And so that's one of the areas we need to really look at. How are you investing in this pipeline to make it as easy as possible for donors to move up? Now, I mentioned this barrier or clogs that happen in mid-level, especially in mid-level, and this is the case here. So what you're looking at is what percentage of donors that move up into the next level. And you can see on the 1,000 to 2,499 level, you see this clog point where they're not moving up like they are in the other areas. We often see this, and so one of the ways to address this is regularly reporting back on the impact, being committed to learning the donor's passions and interests, build that trust between the organization and donor, and then connect the donor directly to the mission. So we're going to see that data again, the pipeline, but I want to now take you out of this and actually show you an assessment and walk you through an assessment that we do for clients and what that does, what's revealed in that data. All right. So what we're looking at is a donor's file, and we're just looking at donors that have given 1,000 cum or above. And for this organization, they had 7,264 donors that met that criteria. And so we tracked it from 2017 all the way total of 2020 and then year-to-date 2021. You can see overall, this organization grew from 7.3 million to 10.4 million. So 42% growth, basically averaging, 12, 13, 14% growth a year from year 1, 2, and 3. So pretty nice growth. So keep that in mind. They grew by 42%, 7.3 to 10.4. Then we broke this out by class year, and we broke it out by individuals, organizations, and foundations. But I want to focus on the individuals here. So the class of 2017, meaning these were all the donors who gave 1,000 plus cum in this year. So that was $5.7 million in 2017. Then we tracked the giving behavior of those same donors from 2017 through 2020. And as you can see, they gave 5.7 in 2017, but 3.9 in 2020. So we lost 32% of their value over that time period. We like to see no more than 15 to 20% at the most of value loss. So they're a bit above best practice. But then you see the class of 2018. These are new donors again that hit the 1,000 plus cum criteria. They hit just over 2.3 million or almost 2.3 million. Those same donors by 2020 were at 1.2. So we lost 45% of their value in just those 2 years. And then in 2019, we saw 2.3 million donors that hit 1,000 plus. Those same donors in 1 year lost 38% of their value in just that time. So if we're looking just on the individual donor side, just over this time period, they lost $3.747 million to value attrition. And I won't go into organizations and foundations that were smaller, but overall, when you add it all up, they lost just over $4 million in value attrition. Now, when we presented that to the executive director, they were stunned because they're looking at bottom line revenue only, and they grew 42%. And you can still feel good about that, but also they were surprised how much they've lost over that time period. And of course, they're wondering, how can we change that? How can we lessen the amount of revenue that's going away from donors? Here's what that looks like just from individual donors. So you can see we track every one of their donors that gave 1,000 cum. And, the beautiful thing about major gifts really is to know what the story is behind each one of these donors. So this individual donor here that gave 80,000, what a great gift. And then 1,000 in 2018, and they stopped giving. So what's the story behind that donor? Or the next donor gave 65, then 44, then 5, then less. That's what we're trying to figure out. That's what we want to know. We want to know what's the story behind these donors. And unfortunately, when we talk about these donors, no one knows the answer. And that's the problem. No one knows why these donors have been giving less year over year over year. And that's what you want to find out. Now I want to show you the pipeline analysis. This is showing the total database. Now you can tell this is a large organization. If you remember, there's only 7,300 donors that give in 1,000 plus cum, but they have 530,000 donors giving almost 49 million dollars. Sorry. So what does that say to you? That says they have a tremendous donor acquisition and direct response cultivation program. And you can see, look at the total donor counts of this. I mean, tremendous number of donors, but they're giving at lower dollar figures. Let me see if I can open, there he goes. So you can see the cum amounts here. Oops. There you go. So there's a number of clogs in this one. You can see from 82,000 donors to 31. So there's from the 50 to 74, and then the 75 to 99, big jump. 80, and then from the 100 to 250 mark, 88,000, and the next one below 22. But one I want to really focus on is this 1,000 to 4,999 group. You can see they have 4,173 donors that gave $6.7 million. But then the next level below, just 175 donors giving at the $5,000 to $9,000 level for over $1 million. And then you can see hardly any donors in this area of 10,000 and above compared to the big donor file. So obviously they've got some major clogs. Not only can they do some techniques and direct response to kind of unclog these other areas, but especially they have the area of having a real true mid-level program, which they didn't have prior to us working with them, to move them up and move this donor file in a much better way and unclog that pipeline. So there's a number of things that we show in this, but I'm going to focus on finally the revenue projection that we do for them. So with this data, we can do a 5-year revenue projection. All right. So in the last year in 2020 that we, on this particular data, they brought in 10.4 million. This is their baseline. This is where they are today. We looked at their file and broke it out by major and mid. And you can see that they have enough donors and major gifts right now to have one full-time major gift officer. And by the end of year 5, they'll have enough for 2 and go from 1.1 million to 3.4 million in revenue. And it's going to grow 2 ways. One is the number of major donors in the major gift program will grow from 150 to 250, but also the revenue per donor will grow from 7,000, almost 7,500 to 13,700 per donor. And they're going to be able to grow it because they will now have a disciplined program in place to grow, to develop relationships and grow the revenue with the donors that are in the program. This is how we have seen major gift programs grow over the long term. Obviously the number of donors in the program, but the revenue per donor. And the reason the revenue per donor goes up so much is that we're finally cultivating them and asking them and challenging the donors to do more. So this is actually a very conservative projection model for us. Now, in addition, you'll see this line called transformational giving. what we have found is by the end of year 3, now that we've developed this discipline of program to major gifts, they are developing the relationships, and that's when we start to see more high 5, 6, and 7-figure gifts start to come in. So we add another 20% on top of the 2.1 million in that year to equal 2.5. That's going to come in from those transformational type donors. And that increases up to 30% by year 5. So for this major gift program, we believe it'll grow from 1.1 million to 4.4 million at the end of year 5. Then we add in the mid-level. So they have enough donors right now that they can start with 1,800 donors in the program, hire 3 reps, and over time, it will grow. As you can see, they have so many donors, from 3 reps to 12 reps by the end of year 5, and grow revenue per donor from just over $1,750 to $3,000 per donor. So that also is going to grow and have a tremendous impact on the overall revenue. All told, this program, we believe, will grow from 10.4 million to 39.5 million at the end of year 5. Currently, they're on a trajectory to go from 10.4 million to 18 million. In other words, if they didn't do anything different in their programs, the way it's been growing year over year, they'll grow from 10 to 18 million. So not bad. But we believe this program over a 5-year period, that equals 75 million in revenue. But we believe they can actually, by adopting the Veritus way, this disciplined program, having it managed properly, they'll go from 10 to 39, which will mean over a 5-year period, almost 47 million more than what they're currently on track to do. So obviously, this was a big discussion point and one that they were blown away with. But honestly, they also intuitively felt like, yeah, we think this is possible. We've always felt like there was more we could do, obviously. So that gives you a little a snippet of what one of these assessments can do and how you can look at your data file in a new way. So now I'm going to go back into the presentation and talk a little bit more here about the goal really is to create a fundraising system and a strategy that helps the donor to give to their capacities. So you saw in that 5-year revenue growth, the reason the revenue per donor is going to grow so well over time is because we're cultivating and stewarding, reporting back, thanking, developing that relationship, and asking them so that they do grow and give to their capacity. So here's some things to ask yourself about your own data. Are you looking at year-over-year growth of your existing donors? Are you accounting for the impact of new money on your overall net? And what is your rate of promotion to major gifts? In other words, of your donors in your file, what percentage of those that are in your mid-level area are moving to major gifts every year? Because what we have found is if an organization does not have a mid-level program, typically donors move up at a 0.2 to 1.2% rate organically. In other words, no one's asking them to do much, but they do it on their own. So 0.2 to 1.2. What we have found when you have a robust mid-level program is that donors are moving up in a 3 to 3.5% rate. So it's significantly different by having a mid-level program. You'll be seeing many more donors moving into major gifts. And then are you evaluating this donor attrition and donor value attrition each year with your donors? Because this is the indicator for you to tell you how well your program is actually performing. All right. So how to access your own donor pipeline. So to find out how donors are moving up this pipeline, are there clogs in that pipeline? You go to your database and select any donor who gave $1 or more in any one of the last 4 full calendar years or year to date. And so for each donor, you export the following. You need their donor count, cumulative giving totals, and average gift amount. And you put that information, I'll show you what that looks like on the following chart here. So this is what it looks like. Now you saw this one, this is the same pipeline chart, pipeline that we saw with the last data set. But again, this will show you exactly how your donors are moving up that pipeline. You can see there's all these clogs. You know, as you can see, as we talked about, heavy direct response type of organization. I mean, imagine 530,000 donors, and of that, in this year, in 2020, you know, it's not, they don't even have 5,000 donors yet that are giving 1,000 or more cumulative. So there's obviously a huge problem here of donors moving through that pipeline, and they need to do a better job. And then they recognize that. You should be able to find this out for your own organization pretty easily. So a healthy mid, major, and plan giving program happen when the functions of donor acquisition and cultivation are fully functioning and effective. Because, and in that case, it was really functioning well, and what was not functioning was cultivating them and moving those donors up through that pipeline. But in order to have a healthy major gift program, mid-level, and plan giving program, you also have to have a healthy cultivation and acquisition program. So this is what a healthy organization looks like. Everyone at the organization sees the donor as a partner. Gift officers seek out and learn the donor's passions and interests authentically. I mean, this is what major gifts is all about, right? A major gifts officer's job is to find out the donor's passions and interests and relate it to all the programs and projects that make up your mission and match that up. And if you can do that successfully, that's when you will see donor gifts get larger and larger. Creating that system is allowing the donor to reach their potential. So going back to that donor pipeline, are you investing in all those areas in a proper way? And the organization and the gift officers are reporting back promptly on the impact of that donor's gift so that that loop continues. If you're not closing that loop, you're going to lose your donors. All right, here's a little comparative analysis. And this is an organization A before a discipline program, and B is after they've adopted the Veritus way. And this is a compilation of several organizations. But we put this together to say, what did it look like before, and what did the organization look like after? So organization had 59% attrition. After they do have a discipline program, it goes down to 41 overall. The revenue per donor, 7,854 up to 9,435 in just 1 year. They had high staff turnover, staff stay because they're appreciating value. They have no offers to present to donors. And the next, after working with us, they have specific offers with different price tags based on donors' ability. There's no clear plan or strategy. They have a 12-month communication plan for every donor. They only had goals overall for the program, and now they have an individual cash flowed goal for every donor. They were chasing new people for new money, prospects that weren't even donors, and now they're only working with qualified donors. And before, you had major gift officers spending time on events and other things that had nothing to do with their caseload, to them 100% being focused on their caseload. If you can get to be what organization B here, this is how you're going to see your program thrive. So We did the live assessment. We showed you that. Now, I want to say we offer this for free. You can do this yourself, or we can do this for you. And here's what we do, why we do it for free. There's two main reasons. One is because we want you to have good data. And secondly, because it allows us to show you where there's areas of opportunity, and if you wished, how Veritus could help you. It's a way for us to get in front of you and show you what is happening with your donors and to show you how we think you can grow. Remember, you'd have a 5-year revenue forecast. You know exactly how your donors are behaving. But I want to stress this one thing to you. There's no obligation to work with us at all. We want you to get this good data. We want the opportunity to show you that we could help you, but there's no obligation to do this. At the bottom end of the line, if you just got the assessment, we would be happy because now you have a baseline of where your donors are. So in that analysis, you'll find out donor attrition over the last 5 years, donor value attrition, a breakdown of donor value attrition for individuals and organization. You get a 5-year revenue projection for mid-level and major gifts. We'd report on all those clogs in your pipeline. And then we give you some recommendations on the number of MGOs and MLOs that the data supports. And that's important. People are like, I don't know how many people we should hire. The data will drive those decisions for you because it will show you the value of those portfolios and the number of people that you actually could act to cultivate. So now is a great time. By the way, at the end of the session, and then again, you'll get an email and you'll have a link if you want to find out more about how to do the data assessment. But now I want to turn to any of the questions and see if I can help answer those, because now it's question time. And if you have other questions, put them in the chat, put them in the Q&A so that I can see them. So I got a question from Marcia, who says, when you're looking at multi-year pledges in these numbers, are you looking at the total pledge amount in that year it was pledged or the annual pledge payments? That's a great question. We want to look at the annual pledge payments, cash in the door, Marcia, because I know that a lot of organizations will, let's say you got $1 million pledge over 5 years, they'll put all the $1 million in 1 year. And then there's nothing after that. What we want to see is that it's pledged and the cash that's actually in the door so that we can see the true value of those donor gifts year over year. Another question was, can you show the things needed for the pipeline again? Of course, be happy to. Let's look at that. Here we go. All right, this is again how to do the donor pipeline. So take a snapshot of this. Again, you'll get a recording of this as well, so you'll be able to see it. But I'll keep it on here. Those are the two questions. Are there any other questions that you may have? Just put them in. I'll give you I'll give you another minute to pop in another question. I really would urge you to take advantage of this free assessment. We've done thousands of them. And I mean, in 1 year, I think last year, we did over 250 assessments. And maybe 30 of those people, of those assessments, actually became a client. So we're all about giving you good information. So please take advantage of this. All right, we had another question come in. Can you talk a little bit about donor value attrition post a capital campaign? Very good question. So obviously, if you're at the end of a campaign, the next year, you're going to see a huge drop off. So one of the things that we do before we do any donor value assessment, like I just showed you, is we have a document, a discovery document that we send out to adjust for these types of anomalies. And then we also ask about certain donors that we take out that may not be like a donor might give $1 million and you know that they're not going to give another gift. We would take them out of the assessment to show trends, just because it would skew the overall results. So we want to be very careful not to include donors that are going to skew those amounts. Or we want to know, if you're coming off a capital campaign, that's obviously going to skew your donor value attrition. All right, here's another question. How would you approach a VP of development who keeps pushing for the need to grow our MG donors and donations, but who totally ignores the stewardship of middle donors and the development of a pipeline? This happens a lot. So how I would approach them is actually showing them the data. So this is a powerful tool to show the VP of development how donors are moving up the pipeline. And so for example, the one that I just showed you, when we showed this to the organization, they were like, oh gosh, I mean, we went from 4,000 donors to 170 donors, and then the next level. And we're like, we've got to unclog that pipeline. We've got to be able to have a mid-level program where we can start to introduce a more one-to-some, one-to-one type of cultivation and move these donors up into major gifts. That's the number one problem. Whenever I hear from VP of development say, oh, we don't have enough major donors, the first thing I do is, let's look at your donor pipeline. Let's look at what's happening. And sure enough, there's a huge clog. And I say, you have donors in your database right now. If you properly cultivated them, invested in them more than you would a $10 donor, you would start to see more donors move up into major gifts. And there would be the answer to your problem. All right. Any other questions? Oh, we have another one. Many social service agencies saw an uptick in donations during the pandemic hit. Yes. Do you have any thoughts on donor value attrition in that scenario? We've seen the same thing. And so we've seen some more value attrition going on between 2021, 22. And the key is, how are you cultivating those donors? So in many cases, you could think of them almost as like a disaster type of donors who only gave during that period. And so a lot of organizations did see an uptick. But the key is, what are you doing on a consistent basis to let them know you still have needs beyond now that we're post-COVID? And that's the key. The key is building those relationships with donors, stewarding them well, and trying to build relationships with them so that they don't go away. Now, you will see more value attrition probably in 22 from 21 to 22. Hopefully in 2023, you have plenty of time to turn that around and start reaching out to those donors who either gave less or stopped giving the year prior, and try to bring them back and to give at higher levels. But yes, a number of organizations did see higher value attrition because of that. Okay, here's a question. Oh, let's see, we already answered those. All right, here we have one from Tova. Does an organization need to have a pretty clean data in order to begin these levels of assessments? Or have you seen success with doing these kinds of assessments at smaller scale while data gets cleaned up? It helps you tremendously if you can have clean data. Many times, though, we don't always get clean data when we do the assessment, but it causes the organization to clean up their data. So you really need to have your data pretty clean. I don't know how messy it is. We could get it from you. When you get our donor criteria, your data person should be able to know and see if it's easy to get us that data. But all databases need to be as clean as possible. So I would urge your organization to spend some time, if you don't have clean data, to clean that up, because it's important. Outside of doing this assessment, it's important to have clean data. All right. Any other questions? Let's see. I think that's all I have so far. I really hope that you take advantage of getting the free assessment. You'll be getting that in an email to follow up with this presentation. And again, so many people have taken advantage of it. You don't have to become a client of ours. I want you to get good information. I will say we will make a compelling case, however, of why we should be your agency to help you lead your major gift officers and help them be successful and develop your mid-level programs so that you can have a healthy major gift program in the future. So thank you for joining me today. Look out for that email. And if you have any other questions, feel free to email me at jschreifels@veritusgroup.com. I'd be happy to answer any other questions. And thank you for joining me, and hope you have a great day. Thank you.